everyone, hope you're having a good weekend. Just a few notes for the garden for next week. The shishito peppers are still going crazy, so we can continue to harvest those. If you haven't harvested them before, they should be about 3 inches long. Like this is a good one here. I don't know if you can see that. I guess it's kind of like the length of my middle finger, I guess. So all along here, you can harvest those. The tomatoes are starting to ripen. It looks like they're both the cherry tomatoes and whatever these mysterious tomatoes that were supposed to be another type of cherry tomato, which aren't, can be harvested. I think last week on Thursday, Marilyn and Sally D had put maybe 3 or 4 of these larger tomatoes in a Ziploc bag. So if you harvest them, I would fit 3 or 4 in a Ziploc bag, and then put the cherry tomatoes in a separate bag. And you can mix the cherry tomatoes from here and from bed 23. A lot of these actually right now have split, unfortunately, because of the rain. So if you feel comfortable eating those, go ahead and eat them yourself. I don't want to put the split tomatoes in the bag to take up to EFD. So you can either eat them or just throw them on the ground. Let's see, some of these, oh no, that one has a split on the other side. So we'll see what happens, because we're supposed to keep getting rain. So there actually might be more split by the time any can be harvested. Also, jalapenos can be harvested. You want them to be about 3 inches long too. That's a good size one. I don't know if you can even see that. Right there. And you just want to kind of pull up gently on the stem of the jalapeno until it releases. But it looks like there's probably going to be quite a few in there. You might have to just dig around a little bit. I did plant buckwheat in this bed, so with the rain, I'm hoping that helps it germinate. The husk cherries in this bed in particular are going crazy. You can harvest the ones that are on the ground, and you can also harvest in the yellow, let me see if I can find one to show you. They're hanging on the plant and the skin has turned yellow and kind of papery like that, you can harvest those too. And I'm actually going to harvest those this weekend because there's just so many, but I bet they'll be more ready by early next week. The cucumbers, I harvested some. I'm just harvesting a bunch of stuff today to bring back on Monday because it needs to be harvested. But in bed 21, the cucumbers look like this. There's a couple of different types. So as long as they're kind of like long and skinny, like some of them have kind of formed oddly. I'm not sure what that's all about. Something to look up. But there's another type that's kind of this just long and skinny type. And those are probably, I don't know, 6 to probably 8 inches long. But then in bed, the cucumbers in bed 15 are the shorter type. And these, like once it gets to this size, that's probably too big. So ideally, I mean, they're still edible, but they just get really seedy. So the ideal size is more like this. And that's, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, like 4 inches long, but it's not as big. So ideally harvest when they're about this size here. It looks like the edamame is forming, but I don't think it's ready to harvest yet. You can see the pods are here, but the seeds aren't plump in there. So that's just something to keep an eye on because I think we'll be harvesting that soon. There are more green peppers we can harvest. There's a good size one here. I actually might just harvest that now. I'll go get some pruners and harvest that one and bring it back. There are more jalapenos in this bed too. me see if there's any more of the... Oh yeah, there are some bigger peppers down here. A couple of the bean beds still are not producing. I ended up pulling out all the plants in bed 18, the dragon tongue beans. They were just really infected with Mexican bean beetles. You can see right here, that little guy is, I think, not baby, but I don't know the correct term. Pupa? I don't know. So anyways, I did spray this bed on the top with some kind of, it's called 8, and it's a nastier chemical, just to try to kill off the little bugs that are left in here. I want to kind of wait and see how this looks early next week. Then we can clear out the leaves from the bean plants, and I want to plant Tokyo Bacana, which is a green that can actually germinate well in the heat. It's really important though to put row cover over it to protect it from flea beetles. And I'll put notes in the to-do list. Oh, and there's a little lizard of some kind. I'll put some notes of how to plant it. I think we'll probably do 3 rows and space it about 6 inches apart. But we'll direct sow that after this bed gets cleaned up a little bit. I do want to do a little more research on these bean beetles because I think they actually lay their eggs in the soil. So I want to make sure that the soil isn't compromised before we plant something else. So I'll do that research and make notes before we put anything in there. Oh, some of these cucumbers can be trellised up, the ones that are kind of on the ground. Marilyn and Sally D did a good job of trellising these up. And you can see they just kind of pulled up the vines and used a little string to attach them. So we can do that in this bed and even some of the other vines that are trellising or that are falling down to the ground. And oh, I did treat this bed with 8 because I noticed more of those Mexican bean beetles, the little yellow fuzzy guys in here. So we'll see what happens. Apparently you can use that stuff like up to a day or 2 before you harvest. I would like for there to be at least like a decent rain before we harvest this again, which I think we're gonna get. And there are some, this is still producing some husk cherries. So look in this bed too. Sometimes you have to just kind of pick up the plant to get the husk cherries off the ground. We can probably harvest some more basil. What is this little guy? I don't know what that was. So like some of these taller, let's see, some of this might have been harvested already, actually. So we'll let that bush out for another week, actually. Changed my mind. Before we harvest that again. And if you see any of these, this is a Thai basil, I believe. It flowers. Pull the flowers off. And I think that's about it. Oh, one other thing, and I'll put this in my notes. We are still working on the rain garden. We made a good amount of progress on Friday. I have 2 new volunteers who are looking to get hours. So their names are Cindy and Bob. They might be here this week. We got most of this section all weeded out, but they might be here this week to work down on this further section. So if you see two people out here who you haven't seen before, and they're pulling weeds, that's probably who it is. And I think that's about it. So I hope everyone has a good weekend, and I'm sure I'll see some of you next week. Thanks guys, bye bye.